All right. Well, it is a fantastic opportunity to be able to speak with a Penske racing engineer, Jonathan Diuguid. Jonathan, you were engineer for the IMSA race team at Penske. How are you?
Good. How are you today, Robin?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We're talking ahead of the Road America race coming up. It's a 2 hour and 40-minute race,
Mhm.
and it is a big and fast racetrack to be holding it. How are you feeling about that event?
We're feeling pretty good. I think our Porsche 963 seems to do well at the natural flowing, smooth road racing circuits, and Road America just got repaved after 10 or 15 years, and so the surface is quite smooth and but still holds the character that it had before. So we're looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, and it seems like the 963 has been quick in a lot of places. You guys were definitely quick right out of the box in Daytona, and clearly you were quick at the Glen. Um, what is it about those types of tracks that suit that car? Is it a downforce car but kind of sensitive? Or what would describe why it's quick those places?
I think with you look at the LMDH regulations and the way they've defined the aero box, and I think you're going to have some weekends where an Acura or BMW or Cadillac might work well, and you're going to have some weekends where the Porsche 963 will work well. And I think our car has been proven to work well at the higher speed circuits. I wouldn't say we're lower drag or different downforce than anybody else, but I think probably the operating window where the car operates in, with respect to ride heights and things like that, there's just some circuits that suit us better, and that seems to be the higher speed, higher flowing circuits.
Got you. So, what has it been like working with Porsche? In more recent history, you guys worked with Acura in the
Mm-hmm.
IMSA program. Penske did work with Porsche in the late 2000s in an LMP2 car,
Yep.
but it's been a while since you've been working with Porsche again, in especially at this leading class capacity. What's that been like? I'm very curious about working with Porsche versus working with Acura.
I think each manufacturer has their benefits, and we had a good run with Acura there where we won 2 championships and won a lot of races together, and so that was a really fruitful partnership. And as we look forward with Porsche, we're really excited to be partnered with them. Motorsports and racing is part of their culture and part of their brand and really part of their brand identity, and they approach it as such. So there's a large support system with Porsche Motorsport, and Porsche in general, and they have a lot of recent experience in Formula E, which is an electric series and has some electric motors there, which has been invaluable to our program, to sort of shortcut some of the processes there and be able to apply that. And so taking that knowledge from all of their other racing programs and being able to apply it to an LMDH car, which is quite complicated with the hybrid system, has been a huge benefit. So having the resources and backing and support, of a company like Porsche with the heritage and the racing pedigree that they come with is invaluable. And we're looking forward to delivering for them and for the PPM team in 2023 and beyond.
That's a really interesting tidbit that you say there, because um, much of the hybrid system in the IMSA program is standardized, right? So
Mhm.
what are the learnings? What is the experience and the knowledge that Porsche have? How does that incorporate into a largely standardized system?
Yeah, I would say the hardware is standardized, Robin, but the sandbox of software that the manufacturers are allowed to play in is pretty large. So
Gotcha.
how they handle what happens across shifts or in the braking zones, or how the brake bias moves, and then also the integration of the hybrid components with the combustion engine is not a small undertaking. And I think that's something that all the manufacturers competing in the LMDH platform don't get enough credit for, is seamlessly integrating the hybrid components with the ICE engine that they bring to the game, whether it's the 6-cylinder with Acura, the V8's a Cadillac, or our twin turbo V8 that we run, and then our Porsche 963. I think that's a really large task and a really large undertaking that's not easy to get right. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these teams and manufacturers struggling on some tracks to execute that properly.
Yeah, I understand. That makes sense. Yeah, because integration is huge. I mean, I don't know. There might be tiny little performance windows you can eke out with um, way the way the electric motor engages with shifts and things like that, as you mentioned. But I imagine a big component would be drivability. Is that
Yep.
is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the LMDH cars and the GTP platform, the cars do have a lot of power, but they're also heavy, and the tires aren't massive, and so they are traction limited in a lot of cases. And so being able to apply the power down is where, you know, large differentiation in performance of the cars is. So I think, you know, that and traction control, like you said, are really important development areas that everybody focuses on.
Gotcha. Yeah. So corner exit would be the critical. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, I'm how early was Penske working with Porsche? How early in the process did Team Penske get involved with Porsche on their GTP program?
Yeah, I would say it was probably you know, around the announcement of the program partnership, which I believe was in you know, mid to June of 2021, when they announced the partnership. I would say at that point we had 2 to 3 people working on the program full time, and then ramped up from there to where at the end of the season in 2021 we had you know, enough personnel to run a full testing program and everything there. So it's been about 2.5 years.
Okay. And were you guys involved at all? Did you guys have any influence on Porsche choosing a turbocharged V8 as the internal combustion engine for their GTP program? And
No,
if so, how has it been working with that engine?
I think you know, the selection of any engine, there's no rules or regulations in the GTP platform or the LMDH platform that say it has to be production based or anything like that. So I think you know, as part of the selection process, it was looked at all the way from, you know, carrying over the 919 V4 that they had in the LMP1 prototype all the way to the solution that we arrived on here. And it was looking at things between weight and crankshaft height and all these other different topics that, you know, that the manufacturers are looking at, and also the power shape curve that had to be met as part of the LMDH regulation. Because,
Okay.
you know, the power shape curve, I think that's something that's important for the, you know, fan base to know, is that even regardless of the engine architecture, twin turbo or naturally aspirated, there's a target power shape curve that every LMDH car runs to. And so, you know, they're operating with the same power to the ground. And so you have to make sure your engine's big enough, but also has the proper curve shape and power delivery to be able to meet that target to the maximum. Otherwise, you're giving up performance. And so, you know, that's how we arrived on a fairly large displacement twin turbo V8. And I've asked the questions a couple times to the different powertrain guys and said, like, you know, if you unleash this thing and ran as much boost as you wanted to, and, you know, put as much fuel in there as you wanted to, how much power could it make? And I still haven't got a solid answer, but I know it would be at least 4 digits. So
Yeah, I would that much displacement. I would think so. Yeah. It's interesting. You're describing the area that maximize it. It's Calc 2. It sounds like it's getting the area under the curve and getting it top. That's for all you fellow math nerds. There it is. It has been very fascinating to see Cadillac's, I believe it's a 5.5 liter naturally aspirated V8. You and BMW are both running turbo V8s, but yours is the larger of the two. And then Acura's got basically what would have been an IndyCar engine had the world gone a different way. With their tiny V6. Has it been surprising the variety of engines you guys have and are competing against?
I think it's not surprising because, you know, I think IMSA and the FIA-ACO did a really good job of forming the regulations to be able to allow manufacturers to bring whatever platform they wanted to bring to the championship. So you have the variety of car noises and RPM ranges and sounds and, you know, different pops and bangs going into the corners. And I think that's what's unique about our championship is sometimes you don't even have to be looking at the racetrack to know which car came by. And I think that's really important to the brands and the manufacturer and also the fans to have that variety, because that's what makes sports car racing unique is the variety of cars that are on the track at the same time, and the manufacturer involvement, and then also the connection with the brands, the teams, and the drivers too as well.
Now, Penske is also doing something really interesting where they are running both an IMSA team and a WEC team, World Endurance Championship. Is there communication across the pond between you guys? I mean, how is that operating?
Yeah, absolutely. It's you know, it's run under one roof, and not physical roofs, but, you know, metaphorical as far as the team structure. And there's nobody aside from myself and, you know, one other person, Travis Law, that go between both the events and try to attend as many races as possible. But outside of that, there is an open communication flow, and we're utilizing tests that the IMSA program does or races that the WC team does to continually improve the car. And obviously, the more mileage that we get on track, the more the car is exposed to different scenarios and issues, whether it's curb riding or reliability of this part or that part. And so I think that global approach has given us a slight advantage above our competitors, just because the amount of mileage that we run, some of the opportunities that we have, and we're trying to take full advantage of that with the best communication possible between the two teams.
And I mean, and it's not perfect uniformity. They don't run the same tire, do they? I mean, I know
No,
the tracks are different, obviously.
Yeah, the tires are the same. The tires
Oh,
are the
they
same.
are.
I think that there's some slight differences between, the aerodynamics, and that's just basically a function of where IMSA does their aerodynamic benchmarking, which is wind shear and concord, and then FIA and ACO does their aerodynamic benchmarking in the Sauber wind tunnel in Hinwil in Switzerland. So there's some slight differences, but it's mostly driven off of just where the testing of the wind tunnel thing's happening, and there's that difference, and then there's some scrutineering systems and things like that from the electronic side that's different. But functionally, the cars are the same and the tires are the same. And so since we have that continuity, we can really directly apply it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So let's dig into the performance just a little bit. I mean, right from the beginning in Daytona, the car was clearly quick, but had some teething issues, I think is fair to say. And,
Sure.
Daytona ended up being Cadillac v Acura largely, which, meet the old new boss, same as the old boss kind of a scenario. And ironically enough, you talked about fast flowing tracks being a strength. You guys did get a win at Laguna Seca, which would be one of those, right?
It was Long Beach. Long Beach was our
Long
first.
Beach.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's what I meant to say. Long Beach,
Yeah.
which is kind of the exact opposite of what you were talking about. That's that's funny. I got my wires crossed there.
Good.
The Glen, you guys won the Glen, and then that was taken from you because of a regulation infraction.
Yep.
So there's been a lot of highs and lows. There's been a lot of peaks and troughs in your season. I mean, how do you judge it so far, and how are you looking at the pure performance of the car versus the results?
No, I think you mentioned it there, and that's why people are in motorsport, is for the highs and the lows. And I think on this program, the development process is quite difficult. I think that's been openly spoken about between hybrid components and car reliability. And I think, that hasn't diminished the spirit of the team and how hard we're pushing. And I think the days where we do have successes like Long Beach, and, we view Watkins Glen as a success as well, because the performance of the team was there and we operated quite well. That's what we all do it for. That's what we go through the difficult days. And performance wise, I think, much like reliability, every time we run the car, we get exposed to, what the car wants, what the drivers want, what the tire wants, and we're smarter for the next event. And so I think the performance of the car has been evolving. Not just our performance, but everybody else we're racing to as well. And I think, in the IMSA and the ACO championships, you look at all the teams are getting better each time they go to a race weekend, and ours is included. And that's where we take the benefits from, is the incremental steps and the positive and performance improvements that we get. And as long as we keep seeing those improvements, everybody keeps pushing quite hard. So it's all heading the right direction.
I mean, I understand the business of racing, and this isn't all that foreign, but how has it been racing against Acura when Acura is how Penske got back into sports car racing after a long spell off?
I think you probably know that motor racing and auto racing is a very small world. And so the Acura program ended on the right note, and, we're all still friends and we joke about everything when we see each other at the track. So the fact that we're competitors now is a difference than what we had before, but I think all the relationships are quite healthy, and, it's quite healthy competition. And the biggest thing is that, we're PPM and Porsche are in racing for competition, and without strong competitors like Acura, nobody would be here. And so that's a big part of it. But that doesn't mean we can't be friends and cordial to each other after the race ends. But when the race starts, it's it's a battle, and that's what we're here for.
Would you call Acura your biggest competitor? I mean, who is the team to beat, it seems these days?
I think if we look at the, if we look at the IMSA championship specifically right now, I think each manufacturer is represented with one car in the top four, and the point spread right now I think is 3 positions in a race. So I think right now all of the GTP manufacturers and LMDH manufacturers are doing a really, really good job. I think if we look at the FIA and WEC championship, there's a step to the full hypercars with Ferrari and Toyota that we're actively trying to close, but it's quite large right now. But I think the performance of the Cadillac and the Porsche and the WEC is quite close, and we're racing each other each weekend there. But as far as IMSA, I wouldn't say there's any car that's leaps and bounds in front of the next one. I think like we talked earlier, you'll see some variability weekend to weekend of one team gets it right and has some performance on the rest of the field. But in general, I wouldn't say there's a huge performance gap.
Yeah, I just to editorialize for a quick moment, I was really surprised about FIA with the hypercar and the GTP parity, and I was like, oh, I'm suspicious about true parity between those two. But when I saw manufacturers like Porsche say, no, we're going to go LMDH / GTP, I was like, well, okay, maybe there will be, but that gap being there, it's like, okay. But
and there's still some work to do there. And Toyota's been racing in WEC for 10 years uninterrupted, and Ferrari has had a strong presence there. And it's not to take anything away from them. They've done a really good job with both the cars they brought to the racetrack. And I think LMDH and GTP cars can compete closely on one lap pace. I think you've seen that in qualifying. The gaps maybe 2 or 3 tenths to get it right, but it's more of we're all in endurance racing, and so it's long stint pace that we're struggling with relative to those cars, and it makes it difficult to compete with the rules package over there from how the race is run.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Well, okay. From the IMSA point of view, what has been the biggest surprise, would you say?
I wouldn't say there's a ton of surprises. I would say reliability is still affecting all the manufacturers, and I don't think there's one car in the entire field that hasn't had what they would describe as a bad race, whether it's from an accident or a reliability issue. And I think that's why you see all 4 manufacturers represented in the top 4. So not a ton of surprises. I think the IMSA technical group is doing a really good job with the BOP approach, and there's there's not been a lot of comments about that in the press, and I think it's because everybody's relatively happy with the approach and feels that they have an opportunity to go racing each weekend. And so that's allowed the teams and the drivers and the fans to focus on the racing, which is what we're all here for. And I think that's a really good approach.
And the hybrid side of it, that's been, relatively speaking, a fairly comfortable transition to have a hybrid powertrain. Then it sounds like. I mean, it's interesting that that's in a lot of ways the largest window of advancement in terms of that has the least amount of rules behind it. But in terms of getting comfortable with a hybrid system, that hasn't been an issue, huh?
No, I think that part has been a large step that's been happening in the background. Obviously, it's an 800-volt system, so there's a safety aspect that needs to come there. And so,
sure,
each one of these circuits that we go to, there's safety briefings with track workers and a safety area for where the cars go to. It's been a little bit more prevalent in Europe in some of those races with F1 and Formula E, but as far as in the North America, IMSA is the first championship to bring a full-time hybrid series to top level professional racing. And so that probably has been the biggest step. Looking at it is just getting used to that and making sure that everyone understands the protocols, from track workers to the series to the teams to the drivers. But we're 6 or 7 races in now, and it's starting to become old habit. And people are beginning to get more comfortable and understand what needs to happen to be safe, but also to be able to extract the maximum performance out of the hybrid systems.
Well, Jonathan Diuguid, I biting my tongue because I desperately just want to nerd out on some of these technical features, but it's been really interesting talking with you, getting a better understanding of the Porsche 963 and how it lives in the IMSA Championship and indeed the WEC Championship as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, I really appreciate it, Robin.